My family's favorite Christmas tradition was always a little strange. Every year, we'd invite a complete stranger to our holiday dinner, someone who was all alone for the holidays. It was my mother's one unbreakable rule. It was a beautiful act of charity, or so I thought. That was until this Christmas, when I finally learned what having someone for dinner really meant. For as long as I can remember, Christmas at my house was a Norman Rockwell painting come to life, just with one very peculiar brushstroke. The air hummed with pine needles and roasting turkey. The fireplace crackled, casting a warm glow on the walls, and the tree, always a little too big for the room, scraped the ceiling with branches heavy from a generation's worth of ornaments. My parents, my grandmother, my older brother Michael, we were a postcard of family perfection, and right at the center of it all was our guest. The tradition was older than I was. My grandmother, Nana Rose, said her own father started it during the Great Depression. "No one should be alone on Christmas," she'd say, her voice as soft as the cashmere sweaters she always wore. "It's the one night where everyone deserves to feel like they belong." It was a beautiful thought, and as a kid, I accepted it completely. Our guests were the living embodiment of the Christmas spirit: charity, community, and radical kindness. I remember them in flashes, like old, faded photographs. When I was 6, there was Arthur, a retired librarian whose wife had passed away. He had ink-stained fingers that smelled of old paper and peppermint. He taught me how to fold a paper crane, and his laugh was a quiet, dusty rustle. He got a little teary-eyed when my mother gave him a gift, a new leather-bound book of poetry. He said it was the kindest thing anyone had done for him in a very long time. When I was 9, there was Sarah, a foreign exchange student whose flight home got cancelled by a blizzard. She had a bright, tinkling laugh and taught us a Christmas carol in her language. We were all clumsy and off-key, but she just clapped with delight. Her energy made the whole house feel brighter. Each year was the same beautiful, heartwarming story. A week before Christmas, my father would go looking for our guest. He had a knack for it, a sixth sense for finding the truly lonely. He'd visit shelters, soup kitchens, and veterans' halls. He'd talk to people, listen, and then extend the invitation. He always said he was looking for someone who had slipped through the cracks. "The ones nobody will miss," he once said. The phrase sounded so charitable at the time, but now it just echoes in my head. The preparation was a whirlwind. The guest room, usually just storage for Dad's old records and my toys, was completely transformed. Fresh linens that smelled like lavender were put on the bed. A small personal Christmas tree sat on the nightstand, with a single, beautiful glass ornament on it. My mother would cook for 3 days straight. The feast was legendary. A massive golden turkey, honey-glazed ham, mountains of mashed potatoes and stuffing, and every kind of pie you could imagine. Nothing was too good for our guest. They were the guest of honor, the entire point of the celebration. As a child, I loved it. It made me feel proud. My family was good. We opened our home and our hearts. My friends' Christmases seemed so boring and selfish in comparison. Ours had meaning. We were giving someone a perfect Christmas. But the older I got, the more the perfect picture started to show tiny cracks. It wasn't one big thing, not at first, just a collection of small, odd details that didn't quite add up. There was the secrecy, for one. My father handled the selection of the guests entirely by himself. My brother Michael and I were never allowed to be part of it. If we asked where he found this year's guest, he'd just smile and say, "Someone who needed a little Christmas magic." Then there were the doors. On Christmas Eve, after our guest was settled in, my father would walk through the house and lock every single door and window. He used these old, heavy skeleton keys he kept on a separate, unlabeled ring. I asked him why once, when I was 12. "Just a precaution," he said, patting my head. "Can't have any drafts. We want to keep all this warmth inside." It sort of made sense, but it also made the house feel less like a home and more like a beautifully decorated box. And the knives. My father was meticulous about his carving knives. He had a special set, German steel with polished rosewood handles, that only came out for Christmas. He'd spend hours sharpening them before the holiday. That sound, steel whispering against stone, became one of the sounds of Christmas for me. A sound that was supposed to be festive, but always felt wrong, deeply unsettling. The blades were always sharpened to a terrifying surgical point, far sharper than you'd ever need for a turkey. Things really started to feel off when I was 17. That was the year Michael was away at college and couldn't come home. It was the first break in our little family unit, and his absence left a quiet void in the house. Maybe that's why I started paying more attention. That year's guest was a man named Elias. He was younger than usual, maybe in his late 20s. A transient, my father explained, who'd been hopping trains for a few years. He had kind, tired eyes and a shy smile that never quite reached them. He was quiet, but he had a gentle way about him. He told us stories about seeing the country from inside a boxcar, of sunrises in the Arizona desert and sunsets over the Kansas plains. He was poetic, and I genuinely liked him. He was also different. The other guests had been lonely, yes, but they were also soft. Arthur the librarian, Sarah the student. They were people buffered by society who'd hit a rough patch. Elias was hardened by the road. He had a wiry strength to him, a survivor's edge I hadn't seen before. He was grateful, but not overwhelmed by our hospitality. And he kept his worn backpack with him at all times, like it was a part of him. On Christmas Eve, as we sat around the fire, my mother offered Elias a glass of her famous mulled wine. It was a tradition, a warm, spiced welcome. "Thank you, ma'am, but I don't drink," Elias said politely. My mother's smile didn't move, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Annoyance? No, it was more like frustration, like an actor had gone off script. "Oh, but you must," she insisted, her voice a little too bright. "It's a family recipe. It's not Christmas without it." "I appreciate that, but I'll have to pass," Elias said. His tone was still gentle, but firm. A strange, tense silence hung in the air. My father cleared his throat. "Now, dear," he said to my mother, "if the man doesn't want any, he doesn't have to." The moment passed, but it stuck with me. Why was it so important? It was just a glass of wine. Later that night, as I headed to bed, I passed the guest room. The door was cracked open, and I could hear Elias humming softly. It was a mournful traveling song, the sound of a free man. The next morning, the air in the house was thick with unspoken tension. Elias came down for breakfast looking rested after a shower, wearing a new sweater we'd left for him. But he still had that cautious, watchful look. My mother, on the other hand, was a mess. She was usually the picture of holiday grace, but her movements were jerky, her smile brittle. My father was trying to overcompensate, his laughter loud and forced. Only Nana Rose seemed unchanged, sitting by the fire, her knitting needles clicking with a steady, unnerving rhythm. The day wore on. We opened presents. Elias got a new winter coat, thick socks, and sturdy boots. He was genuinely touched, and for the first time, I saw his smile finally reaching his eyes. He was a good person. He deserved this, a warm meal and a safe place. While my parents were busy in the kitchen, I ended up alone with Nana Rose in the living room. Elias had gone to his room to try on his new boots. "He's a nice young man," I said, just to fill the silence. Nana Rose didn't look up from her knitting. "He is," she said, "but he's wary, not like the others." "What do you mean?" She stopped knitting and looked right at me. Her eyes, usually so warm, were dark and serious. "The tradition requires a certain receptiveness, an openness, a willingness to accept what is given. This one, he holds himself apart." Her words sent a chill through me. Receptiveness, willingness to accept. It sounded less like charity and more like a transaction. What were our guests supposed to be accepting? "What's in the mulled wine, Nana?" The question just slipped out. Her expression didn't change. "A little something to help our guests relax, to feel at home, to make the evening smoother." She went back to her knitting. "It's a kindness, you see. It's better if they're calm." Better for who? The question screamed in my head, but I didn't ask. My heart was starting to pound. A sedative. They were drugging our guests. Why? To make them compliant? Nothing made sense. My mind started racing, connecting all the dots I'd ignored for years. The locked doors, the over-sharpened knives, my father looking for someone nobody will miss. A monstrous picture was starting to form, one I couldn't bear to look at. I had to know. I needed proof. I mumbled an excuse and went upstairs, past Elias's room, to a door at the back of the hall I was always told to ignore. The cellar door. It was always locked. I remembered my father's ring of old keys. Then I thought of the spare key hook hidden behind a plaque in the kitchen. My hands were shaking as I crept back downstairs. My parents were still in the kitchen, their backs to me. The sizzle and clatter of pans covered my footsteps as I reached behind the plaque. My fingers closed around the cold, heavy iron of a skeleton key. Heart in my throat, I went back upstairs. The key felt like a dark secret in my palm. I stood before the cellar door, my breath caught in my chest, and slid the key into the lock. It turned with a loud, grating click. I pulled the door open. A set of steep, narrow stairs descended into darkness. A damp, metallic smell rose up to meet me. The smell of a butcher shop. I fumbled for the light switch. A single bare bulb cast a sickly yellow light on the scene below. It wasn't a wine cellar. It was a slaughterhouse. The floor was concrete with a large drain in the center. The walls were lined with hooks for hanging meat. On a large wooden table sat a collection of tools that made my stomach lurch. Cleavers, saws, and more of those terrifyingly sharp knives. Everything was spotless, but there was no mistaking its purpose. The air was thick with the ghost of blood. The most horrifying part was a large industrial freezer against the far wall, humming ominously. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. I knew that opening it would destroy my world forever. But I had to know. I pulled the heavy lid open. A cloud of icy vapor rolled out. Inside, wrapped in white butcher paper and neatly labeled with dates, were packages, dozens of them. My eyes fell on one near the top. The black marker read, Earther, December 25th, 10 years ago. I stumbled back, a scream trapped in my throat, and slammed the freezer shut. My mind refused to process it. Arthur, the kind librarian, Sarah, the laughing student, all of them. They weren't guests. They were ingredients. We didn't invite a stranger for Christmas dinner. We invited a stranger to be Christmas dinner. I scrambled back up the stairs, my legs weak, vision swimming. I slammed the cellar door, fumbled the key back into the lock, and ran to my room, collapsing on my bed, gasping for air. The cheerful Christmas music from downstairs was a grotesque joke. My family, my warm, loving family, they were monsters. I don't know how long I lay there, trapped in a storm of horror. An hour? Maybe 2. Then a soft knock on my door. Honey, dinner's almost ready. It was my mother. Her voice, once the most comforting sound in the world, made my skin crawl. I didn't answer. The knock came again, more insistent. Sweetheart, is everything all right? I couldn't speak. The doorknob rattled. Open the door, dear. I stayed silent, frozen. I heard her sigh, then the jingle of keys. A skeleton key slid into my lock and turned. The door swung open. My mother stood there, a concerned smile on her face, still wearing her holiday apron. But when she saw the look on my face, her smile vanished. She knew. She knew that I knew. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. You went into the cellar, didn't you? She asked, her voice quiet, stripped of all its usual warmth. I could only nod, tears streaming down my face. She sat on the edge of my bed but didn't touch me. She looked tired, suddenly so much older. I was hoping we'd have more time, she said softly. Michael didn't find out until he was 19. Your father wanted to tell you together after the new year. Tell me? My voice was a ragged whisper. Tell me what? That you're murderers? That you're cannibals? She flinched at the word, but didn't deny it. It's not that simple, she said. It's a necessity. It's about survival. And then she told me the real story. The tradition didn't start with charity during the Depression. It started generations ago, with my great-great-grandfather. He made a pact. The details were murky, but the terms were clear. The family was granted prosperity, health, and long life, but the pact required a sacrifice, a sustenance. Once a year, on the day of greatest celebration, they had to consume an outsider to renew their life force, to renew the pact. "We don't enjoy it," my mother said, her voice pleading. It's a terrible burden, but if we stop, the pact breaks, the protection vanishes, the family withers. Your great-uncle tried to stop. He refused to partake. He was sick within a month and gone by spring." She looked at me, her eyes desperate. "We choose people who won't be missed, people already lost to the world. We give them one perfect day, the best food, a warm fire, a feeling of belonging. It's more than they would have had, and their contribution allows our family to continue. It allows you to live, to be healthy, to have a future." I stared at her, horrified. She was justifying mass murder as a family duty. "The wine," I choked out. "It puts them to sleep," she confirmed, her voice now clinical. "They go to bed happy and warm, and they just don't wake up. It's painless. Your father is very quick. He learned from his father, just as he will teach Michael, and just as he would have taught you." The feast, the main course, was never turkey. That was just for show. The real feast, the special roast that Nana Rose always brought up from cold storage at the last minute, was prepared separately. I looked at my mother, the woman who tucked me in that night, and saw a stranger, a monster in a Christmas apron. "Dinner is ready," she said, standing up. "Elias is asleep. Nana Rose is bringing up the roast. We're all waiting for you." She left, leaving my door open. An invitation. Downstairs, I can hear the faint rhythmic sound of my father sharpening a knife. A final touch-up before the carving. I'm sitting on my bed, writing this. My choice is simple and impossible. I can go downstairs and join them, take my place in this monstrous tradition. I can eat the feast and seal my fate, ensuring my own survival at the cost of my soul. Or I can refuse. I can try to run, but the doors are locked, the windows are sealed, and Elias was a survivor. He was wary. He didn't drink the wine. I haven't heard a sound from his room in hours. I don't know what they did to him, how they handle a guest who won't cooperate. I think about the special roast about to be served. I think about my place at the table, empty and waiting. My family has had someone new for Christmas every year for over a century. This year, I am the one who is new to the truth. And I have to decide if I'm going to be a guest at this feast, or if my own family will find another way to have me for dinner. What would you do? The horror doesn't end here. Choose your next nightmare for more chills.